And hello, everybody. Welcome along. It's another edition of the Cricket Badger podcast. And pleased to say, got a special guest on to take on the 20 questions and talk about his life in cricket and beyond. Because there's plenty of life beyond with Ricky Ellcock. Ricky, welcome to the Cricket Badger podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. Welcome. Thank you very much. And a happy new year to all the viewers or listeners, and happy, healthy 2024.
Well, you're going to take on the Cricket Badger 20 questions today. Most of those will relate to your life in cricket, which was plentiful as well. But plenty happens beyond the cricket field, which we'll get to a little bit later. But the first question I always start off with is, why cricket? What was it about cricket that you fell in love with that made you want to devote your youth to it at the very least?
Well, I was born in Barbados in 1965. So, the late 60s, early 70s, this is the days before Xboxes and laptops and things like that. So the only thing that we actually did was to play cricket. We used to play we always said that we played the first night matches. We used to play under the street light, first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And in those days, we were too poor to have a cricket ball. So, we use my mum's fruit displays and stuff like that. So that's what we had. We didn't have anything else. We didn't have a swimming pool to learn to swim or, horses to learn to ride or anything like that. So it was purely cricket because it was simple.
Yeah. And Barbados, I mean, I've been lucky enough to go out there a few times, and the roundabouts are named after famous players. It's a cricket island, isn't it? They love cricket in Barbados.
Absolutely. It's the one thing that we've, beaten the world at. A lot of people don't know that Barbados actually played the rest of the world at one stage. The amount of cricketers that come from that little, I think it's 20. They always say it's 23 miles long and a smile wide. 166 square miles basically is what it is, but it's produced at an enormous amount of top class cricketers, at the top level, but not only at the top level. I mean, even in county cricket or, regional cricket, Australia, New Zealand, places like that, there are people that's gone all over the world to play their trade out of Barbados.
Well, Desi Haynes took me around the museum there one day, and there's a little corridor with all the pictures of everybody that's gone on to play international cricket, and there are loads of them. They just go on, and you kind of you recognise everybody's face, everybody's names. There are so many people that have been created to play cricket from that island. It's incredible that it's kind of pollinated so many great cricketers. So it's a great place to grow up, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we had, from a very early age, as I said, we used to play in the street a lot. With my brother and everybody else in the village. But I had, heaps of friends of mine that were playing in the first division, for instance. Desmond himself lived, I could throw a rock from my house to his house, So, we played beach cricket on the thing. So you were competing at a very early age against, some incredible players, Franklin Stevenson. At 14 years old, I was playing first division cricket in Barbados, the very highest level in Barbados. And at that stage, you were playing against, Desmond Gordon, and if you were a batter, of course, you had Sylvester Clark, I remember BCL side that I played against as a 14-year-old had their opening bowling attack was Sylvester Clark, Ezra Mosley, and Franklin Stevenson. I mean, what an attack. As a 14-year-old to be playing against is just incredible.
I remember watching Sylvester Clark bowl against Kent for Surrey, and he scared me from 100 metres away, let alone actually 22 yards. He was a nasty bowler, wasn't he? He was fast and nasty.
Yeah. Listening to him on the radio, he was scary, farthest facing him. He was one of them people that his balls always got to you a lot quicker than you expected him to. The nicest guy off the pitch. I remember, obviously I started playing county cricket at 17 years old and would come up to London, with the Worcester side, and he'll come and get me. He'll drive around to the hotel, come and get me. The nicest guy in the world, take you out. He won't keep you out the whole night, of course. But the next morning, you're quite likely to get a ball flying at your head at 90 odd miles an hour. It didn't matter what happened the night before.
I think I might know the answer to the next question because you've probably gone on and done it. But if it not been cricket, what would you have done with your life when you were younger?
When I was younger, well, as you know, I love flying. I just wanted to fly airplanes when I was a young kid, and that came from walking on an aircraft carrier in Barbados. Back in the 70s, they used to bring aircraft carriers into Barbados. The Americans would bring them in, and they would park them off Barbados and just fly airplanes off them. And I thought, I used to watch these things and think to myself, man, that's amazing. How cool would that be? I mean, that would really increase your street cred, wouldn't it? So and then eventually they give us a tour of one of these things, and I went, and the guy said, does anybody want to sit in the airplane? And I put my hand up, and he said, yeah, okay, come forward. I went and sat in this thing, and from that day I was sold on aircraft, and then of course I don't know if you haven't read the book as yet, but then of course I went home and told my dad this, and he said, well, black people don't fly airplanes, bro. When you think about doing something that's really achievable, And but what it did do is it sort of implanted in my mind. One of these days, I'm going to show you that I could do that.
Yeah.
So that was it. And of course, going to Combermere in Barbados, they always used to instill in you at school, you could do anything. Just go for it. So that's eventually what I did.
I was telling you the other day when I went across to Barbados. Last time I went to your old school, Combermere High School, because the MCC were playing with the kids out there and playing cricket on the field there. It's a terrific school, and quite a few people have come from there and achieved big things, probably because of what you've just said.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing legacy of in sport, not only cricket but all sport. They had 3 members of a Olympic side running at the Olympics in 1976. The first Test match had a Combermerian in it. Old Herman Griffith. You had Hall, Walcott. Worrell, I mean, the first black captain, he came from Combermere. Just an incredible legacy. And of course, when you went into Combermere, from the first day, it was drummed into your head. All of these people went through here. They all made the legacy. You do the same, and, people like Derek Seeley and all of these people had been through the school. And in later days, there's Gladstone Small, there's, Chris Jordan, there's, Chase, there's Braffitts, there's a heap of them that's come out of that place. It's just been an absolute proper nursery for cricket, for Test match.
That phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. And if you go into a school where so many people have had success, you kind of think, well, that's possible for me as well. But then on the flip side, you've got your dad saying you can't fly planes, so you've got that spirit to prove him wrong at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I always said that Combermere told me that I could do anything. I mean, I always remember the headmaster used to say, I don't care what you do, just be the very best at whatever it is that you do. And Combermere always, I always say to people, Combermere told me I could do anything in this world. I mean, it didn't matter what you could do. And then, of course, I went off to Malvern College, and they showed me how to do anything. So, one school told you what you could do, and another one showed you how you could do it. It was just an incredible education. So I was very lucky.
Oh, you mentioned your book. I'll just bring up the title page again. You can see on the bottom right there, the front cover, you bowling, and it's called Balls to Fly by Ricky Ellcock, out now. And if you quote, there's a link on my Twitter page. I'll do it on the bottom of this when it goes out as well, this podcast. If you quote Badger Fly, when you purchase that book, you can get, I think, £6 off it. It's £21 cover price, but you can get it for £15 if you quote Badger Fly when you purchase Ricky's book. We'll get more into the flying a bit later, because you mentioned Frank Worrell being the first black captain. You kind of emulated him a little bit in your own way in the air when it came to your piloting. But when it comes back to your cricket, who was your biggest inspiration? Who was the biggest influence on your cricket?
My biggest influence, or the first influence I had in cricket, was a guy in my village called Victor Sandiford. I mean, you know, he played local first division cricket, incredible player. I mean, in today's West Indies sort of game, this guy would be playing test match cricket. You know, he was just an incredible player. And he sort of took me under my wings. You know, at 10 years old, I'd gone into Combermere as a 10-year-old. And he sort of took me on my eyes. He gave me bat, he gave me cricket gear, he gave me all that kind of stuff, you know, to get me started. So he always said, you know, he was the guy that actually started it for me. Of course, then, you know, my first test match that I went to was 1974. And I turned up, and that was the Lawrence Rowe 302 test match at Kensington Oval. And I always remember my dad took myself, my brother, and my mom. And you know, I was sitting in the stand, and I could remember the crowd going crazy about Lawrence Rowe. As you can imagine, it was a tremendous knock. And, you know, which is still talked about today in Barbados. Yeah. Everybody remember that knock, 302. But I, as a little kid, I was sitting there thinking, well, this guy's scoring a heap of runs. Everybody shouting for him. There's a little fella on the other end that's also playing quite well, and nobody's hollering for him, you know. And I always, and from then onwards, I was a fan of Alvin Kallicharran. Yeah, he was like the, you know, my hero at the time. You know, I can't remember how much he made, 119, 20, something like that in the test match. But you know, I started sort of supporting the underdog, you know. And he used to always look out for his scores as being, you know, as I think. And then, of course, when I came to England and actually met him and played against him, it was a real privilege. Yeah.
If I could take you back, Ricky, to one day in your life on the cricket pitch that you could relive again, because it's something you either enjoyed or you had great success that day, which 24-hour period would you want to have back and experience again?
Being selected for England without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. You know, to walk off the field at Lord's, and I didn't in those days. You know, you heard they didn't send you texts or you know, I don't know, WhatsApp messages or anything like that. You basically heard it on the telly or the radio. You know, yeah. And I walked off the pitch at Lord's, walked through the long room, and people keep saying, "Oh, well done, congrats!" You know, and I assumed that they were talking about the day before. I can't remember. I think we played Sussex or somebody like that. I got a couple of wickets the day before, so I thought they were talking about that. I didn't realize that I'd actually be selected for England. And I walk up the stairs at Lord's and met, I can't remember. I think it was like Phil Tufnell or somebody like that. And the boy says, "Boy, you know, well done. You know, congrats." I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here, you know? And it's anyway, eventually they said, "Look, you're in the touring side." And so if I had to relive a day, that I think that would be the day. It's just the most, you know, incredible day to be, you know, to be selected to play a test match cricket. Something that as a very young boy, I mean, I played numerous test matches in the back garden, as you could imagine. You know,
I bet I played more than you in the back garden.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's a good day. If we go to a bad day, which day would you not want to relive again? What was the worst day?
7th of February, 1990. 7th of February, etched in my mind forever. You know, it was a day that basically my back said, "Look, enough is enough," and you know, went into total spasm. And you know, it was a day I was in horrendous pain, but all, you know, not only sort of physical pain that I was in, because it was having nausea and, you know, vomiting and all kinds of things, you know, and but it was also, it was when you sort of realized that the tour was over and that you weren't going to be making a test debut or anything like that, you know, that I think is the worst day of my life without a shadow of a doubt.
Because that was you'd taken wickets that season. I mean, just go kind of very briefly. Worcestershire never really, you never really made too many marks at Worcestershire. Moved to Middlesex, everything kicked off. You got a load of wickets that summer. You got selected for the tour because they wanted to take some fast bowlers to the Caribbean to try and fight fire with fire, basically, didn't they? And you got the call, but never actually really played on that trip because your back didn't let you.
Yeah, I started at Worcester. as you know, at 17, I played my first class game for Worcester at 17 years old. I was still at school, still at Malvern at the time. And, I could bowl 90 miles an hour as a 17-year-old. But, of course, when you're that young, bowling that kind of pace, the type of stress and strains that goes through your body is just enormous. So obviously I struggled with injury. And apart from that, everybody wanted a little piece of the action. So I was playing first class games, I was playing second, I was playing on the 25, I was playing on the 17, on the 19, everything, And eventually it just ended bad. So, I spent a lot of time at Worcester injured and playing through injury as well, trying to prove something to myself and to them, by the way, which, they weren't terribly happy about. They were a bit of a pain in the ass, to tell the truth. And then, of course, eventually I left and went to Middlesex, and it all started at Middlesex. Suddenly I had a new sort of captain in Gap, who just understood fast bowlers. I'd come from Worcester, where they just didn't understand express bowlers, and suddenly I had Gap that said, look, give me 5 of your fastest overs, and then you can go off and have some rest. And that really opened up my career from there onwards.
The fast bowlers that I know, anyway, it's all about the pace. Were you conscious of trying to get faster and faster and faster? Was that because I'd imagine as a youngster realizing you could bowl quick, that's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I to me, fast bowling was a sort of athletic tool. I was concentrated on trying to get as fast as I could. So all of my work was done on how to run into the pitch and bracing my left knee and all of them kinds of things. I sort of worked out that I would learn to bowl a cricket ball later, and I always remember Mako saying that to me, as a matter of fact, Malcolm Marshall. He said, look, just bowl fast now, don't worry about lines and lengths and them kinds of things. That stuff you learn later. So that was my object from very early on.
You can have worse people giving you advice than Malcolm Marshall, can't you? I mean, he was probably, in terms of bowling, my favorite bowler to watch. He was just incredible.
Extraordinary. The guy, I always thought that he had a crystal ball or something. He could sit down, work people out just on thinking about it. If you worried about a batter, you phone Mako and say, Mako, how would you bowl to Graham Hick or whatever? He had this encyclopedic memory of people and how to get them out. And not only that, he did it. He was the kind of player that Mako, if he really wanted to, he could blast you out by just bowling sheer pace. If he wanted to, he could seam you out. And if he so choose one day, he would swing you out. He just had everything in his armory. I think, without a shadow of a doubt, the best bowler that I have ever seen. And by the way, absolutely gorgeous man. Really, really. I don't know. You didn't meet many people as nice as Mako.
The last time I was in Barbados, I got a taxi back from the hotel on the West Coast down to the airport, and the taxi driver realised I was there for cricket purposes. And it's the one time I wish I'd put my recorder on for a podcast, because he yapped away about Malcolm Marshall for about 20 minutes, taking me to the airport. Said he was born there, he lived there, that's where he was buried, and he told me everything about Malcolm Marshall. It was absolutely fascinating. It was brilliant.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and Mako, not only when you were, sort of first class cricketer, I first met Mako when I was, as I said, I was about 14 or something. And they used to invite youngsters to the trials to bowl at the big boys. And I went down to the trials as I don't know, 14-year-old or something, to bowl at the guys. And he had just bought a new BMW. I never forget it. The number plate was MM323. It's etched in my memory to this day, this BMW 323. And I was walking on those days. I walked out the back of Kensington over, caught the bus up to my village, and he said he drove past and he reversed and he said, "Youngster, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to catch the bus over there." And he said, "Look, just get in." and he drove me straight to my village. You know, I never forgot that.
Talking about fast bowlers, liking fast bowlers, I'll be interested to know your answer to the next question. If I could let you jump in the body of a current player and experience his life for a day and have his skills and play for the teams and the adulation or whatever she got, who would you choose?
Who would I choose? Is Dhoni still playing?
We can have him. Yeah, he's still playing in IPL, I think. Yeah.
I think I'd have gone for Dhoni. I mean, the man had kahunas of titanium. You know, he was just, I just like how cool and relaxed and, you know, unbothered and of course the boy could play as well. I think, and of course with the adulation that he got in India, you know, you get 200,000 people turning up to watch him get his haircut. You know, I mean, can you imagine? That's amazing. I think probably Dhoni would be my pick.
There was that one when the head of one of the IPLs, CSK were having a practice session, just a net session on the outfield, and the ground was full to watch him walk out to practice.
Absolutely,
crazy.
absolutely,
absolutely
well,
crazy.
I know, I know sort of Dwayne. You remember Dwayne Smith? He played for CSK in the and I went down to CSK one time to watch Dwayne play. I did a flight down to Chennai, and I asked Dwayne, you know, because I'm always fascinated, and I said, what's his team talks like? And he says, 5 minutes. His team talks are 5 minutes. You know, he says, you know what you got to do. Let's go and do it. Let's go. Yeah. You know, and I thought that was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Good choice. I'm going to put you in charge of world cricket for a day, Ricky. You move into the big office at the ICC. You can change anything about cricket that you want to change, whether that's in England, Caribbean, anywhere. What would you do?
First, I want a big office with a massive window so I can look over Lords and. No, I'm only joking. Well, I'll tell you what I would change. I would want standardized match fees, international match fees. So that you know, a guy playing an international for the West Indies or Zimbabwe or whatever is going to earn the same match fee as an Indian player or Englishman or Australian. That's what I would want. And the other thing that I think is really unfair in international cricket is the disparity in ICC funds to the various teams. You know, the West Indies are getting some, you know, a third of what, or fourth, maybe even a fifth of what India gets. You know, and that's not fair. That's not ever gonna have a level playing field for cricket. So I think those would probably be the two things that I would change up front.
I wouldn't have any issue with either of those two. I'm going to vote for you. You can be in charge. If you were starting your career again today, Ricky, as a youngster, is there anything that you'd do differently? And what advice would you give the young you from your perspective today?
Go to university. I'd have gone to university at 17 when I left Malvern. I'd have gone to university. You know, not for anything sort of terribly academic, but just because I think at 17 I was just too young to manage and to play the amount of cricket that I had to play at a professional level. So I think if I'd gone to university and studied for 3 years, it would have added a lot of longevity to my career personally, and I perhaps would have had a longer career. I think that's what I would do. Or if I was going to give advice, I said, look, you know, I know it sounds really interesting and it looks good, but just go to university and relax for 3 years, you know, and come back.
Would the 6-year-old Ricky Ellcock be proud of the cricketer you became and the man you are now?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I've been lucky. You know, I've managed to play. You know, as I said in the book, if you ask little boys what they want to do, you know, the one thing that most little boys and of course lots of little girls now want to play professional sport of some sort. And if you was to, you know, roll that forward, you know, chances are quite a number of them want to fly airplanes. Now I've done both. So I just think I'm really lucky. I'm thankful, I feel blessed, very grateful that I was able to do, both of them. I'm lucky I got a scholarship at 15 years old to, probably one of the most expensive schools anywhere in the world, and a great education, of course, and of course that then allowed me to be able to go off and fly, learn to fly airplanes. So I feel very blessed. That's what, as a 6-year-old, probably would be the best thing for me.
You mentioned your bad day and realizing you weren't going to be able to play your test match. And you didn't play a huge amount of cricket after that, did you? Your career finished because of injury. And that led you into some harder times, didn't it? Because you had to kind of find out what you were going to be after a cricketer.
Yeah, I went into, a massive depressive period in my life. To wake up in the morning and realize that you're never going to do the thing that you trained and worked to do all your life up to that stage. It was just a crushing blow for me. I can tell you the amount of times that I thought, just jump in front of a train or something. It was just horrible, horrible, horrible times. And I had lots of mental issues and whatever else. But it's a period of my life that was very ugly. To just wake up in the morning and it's ending. So it's a period that I still get cold sweats about, to tell the truth.
How did you get through that? Did you talk to people? How did you deal with that?
Well, for a long time, or a long period of time, I tried to do it myself. So I used to sit in the house and just never went out. I used to close the blinds and just basically sleep. My ex-wife now, she would come home some days from work, and I went out to bed as yet. So. And things like that. And then I started to get sort of issues where I thought I had illnesses and all kinds of things. It was just a really horrible period. And she came from a medical family. She's got a number of doctors in her family. So she sent me off to her mum to thing. And her mum basically did some tests and said, because I thought I had AIDS. I thought I had brain tumors. I thought I had cancer. I had all kinds of things, and she did all these tests and said, look, the only thing that's going to get you is probably old age. So, you need to sort your mind out, and so that was the period when I sort of went off to the States. So she basically said, you need to go somewhere where you're not going to see cricket, you're going to hear cricket, or, you wouldn't know anything about it. And so I went off to the States for a few months and just walked around and sort of cleared my mind. And that's when I thought, well, the only thing apart from cricket is flying, or the only thing you want to do is fly, really.
So how do you get from then being a young cricketer that's heading in the right direction to suddenly that stopping, having mental health issues and really struggling, to then becoming a pilot? It kind of, there isn't an obvious path there for me. Where do you go to say, I want to be a pilot now, please?
Well, I mean, Kate, my ex-wife now, she brought a heap of magazines. Basically, that is what she did. I don't know what caused her to do that. But anyway, she bought these magazines and said, look, these are flying magazines, read them and see what you're going to do. Because when people sort of say, well, what else could you do or want to do? And I thought, well, I quite like to fly airplanes. At that stage, I still didn't think that it was possible, even, after my dad had said what he had said. But so when I looked through the magazines, and then they were articles of how to do it and where to do it and all kinds of things. And in sort of research and all of that, my symptoms got better. Right. I mean, it's like weird. I had one of the issues with my eyes when I used to have tunnel vision, so I couldn't see out to the side of me. And suddenly I could realize that I could start seeing more and more out of my eyes. And, while I was reading and researching these things, I would get up in the morning, and I'm a fairly obsessive person anyway. I do everything. If I decide to do something, I do it like crazy. So I used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I just devoured these books until I'd worked out a path of how I was going to do it. And once I'd worked that out, I was off.
I was watching there's a TV drama on Apple TV at the moment. I was watching it last night till about 2 a.m. because I got really into it. Idris Elba. It's called Hijack. And basically the plane gets hijacked and Idris is on the plane. And it's all the kind of ramifications of all that. I was thinking about talking to you today about what training you have to do, because obviously you have to fly the plane. You've got to be able to take off and land it. That's quite crucial, really.
What else?
Yeah. Kind of. It doesn't work out very well if you can't do either of those two things. But then once it's in the air, the guy on the TV program, he just put it onto autopilot and they shoved him into the cabin because he'd done his job so far. But I would imagine, as well as learning how to fly the plane, you have all of these kind of what would you do if you hijacked? What would you do if the wing falls off? What do you do if you land in the sea? There's kind of a lot of things that probably I don't think about that you have to train to for certain things that might crop up or just possibly could crop up.
Yeah, we are training. I don't know how many tests we do on a yearly basis, but I would guess they're probably 10, 12, might even be 15, might be 20. Different tests on all different kinds of things, from your health to, to flying the actual thing. And we're doing a lot of these things every 6 months. And as you say, things like hijacking and stuff like that, there's all procedures that we all trained to deal with, and including the cabin crew as well. And so everybody's so that everybody's on the correct page if anything like that was to ever happen. Touch wood. I mean, airplane is the safest things in the world. I always tell people, Boeing and Airbus built some of the safest piece of machinery you ever meet in the thing. In the aviation, the problems that you have are usually with people. They're not with machinery. It's people.
So let's fast forward then. You're reading the magazines, you think, right, I want to try and do something down this road. How long does it take from reading your magazines to actually being in the cockpit and taking off with your your flying license and everything behind you?
It takes about 3 years, 2.5 years, something like that, to get a license. So you've got a license, but it's basically a basic license. Nobody's gonna give you a job with it, So then you gotta go off and do what we call in the aviation industry build time. And you're trying to get, when you come out of flight school, you come out with a 250, 260 hours, but you need to get to 1,500 before you any half decent airline is going to have a look at you. So between then, you're having to find little bits of jobs to build time, and that's the most interesting bit. It's also the most terrifying because nobody's giving you a job. You're having to scrap around for little bits of flying time, and it normally means flying night flights from Stansted to Manchester or something like that, which is not the safest thing to be doing by yourself and stuff like that as a fairly inexperienced pilot. But bearing in mind that you only fly in papers, so you're not going to kill papers, are you? So but it's one of the ways that we as young pilots managed to build time. I'll tell you a funny story. When I graduated out of flight school, the guy that did the graduation ceremony, he said to us, look, this is the most dangerous part of your flying career, right now, the next 3 years or so, which is building hours to get to the 15. If any of you are going to die, this is the period. And that brings it home to you,
Yeah.
If you can get through this period, then life is going to be a lot simpler.
You became the first black captain of, was it Virgin Atlantic's flights? That's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I joined Virgin in 97. It's been going since 84, so 13 years, and then I turned up. They gave me a job. It was a little bit of luck. One of the guys that interviewed me at Virgin was married to a Barbadian lady, funny enough. So that perhaps helped in some way. I don't know. Previous to that, I had applied to, I could not tell you how many people I applied to try and get a job. And, as you'll read in the book, it just wasn't happening. I went off to Liat in the Caribbean, flew for Liat for a few years, and then sort of build my time. And then I as I was flying for Liat, I was applying to all these airlines around England, and eventually Virgin offered me a job. And it was hard work. You join an airline where you the sole black person. It was like going back to Malvern again, and looking down at Morning Praise and realizing that you're the only black face in the whole school. And it was the same in Virgin. People look at you like you had 12 heads sometimes when they got on board, because they hadn't seen one before. But eventually I got to the bit when I became a captain of an aircraft there.
I know you've talked about discrimination because of the colour of your skin. I couldn't work out from reading it whether you were talking about your cricket times or whether you're talking about your air flying times, or whether it was just a general trend throughout your life. But obviously cricket's had its troubles in that regard. Is that something you encountered?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll read some horror stories in the book, I'll tell you. I put them in. I had issue with trying to get this book published because a few people, one guy, I asked, I wrote 127,000 words, right? And I gave it to a guy that, to a couple of people, asked them if they can edit it. And for me, one guy flatly refused. He said, "I'm not putting anything like that. It was 30 years ago, and it seemed as though you're having a cheap shot," is what he said. And I thought, well, I'm going to write one autobiography, and everything that happened to me is going to go in there, as far as legally possible. So eventually I decided, look, I'm going to just do it myself, But yeah, the book covers racism from school days all the way to, to my son. One of the last things in there is a incident with my son. So, it covers the full spectrum of my life. And, at Commonwealth, for instance, I had a couple of white people at Commonwealth. There was one white guy, Johnny Edwards, and by the way, incredible cricketer he was. But there wasn't a lot at Commonwealth, and then of course I turned up at Malvern, and there weren't any black people at Malvern. There was a difference. And then of course in cricket during the 80s, you probably understand some of the issues that went on during the 80s. Well, some of them affected me just like they affected most test players, most black county players in back in the 80s and early 90s.
It'd be nice to not be able to talk about racism on this podcast, but we've talked about it far too much, I'm afraid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I've gone away from the 20 questions because your life's far too interesting. It doesn't kind of fit the pattern of my 20 questions. So I'm gonna carry on plugging away with you and your flights and everything. I just think it's, I mean, as you said, kind of youngsters growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up, little Fred? I want to be a sportsman. I want to fly planes. I want to drive trains or whatever. You basically ticked two of the big boxes there, haven't you? It's when I asked you the question about what would the 6-year-old you think about what you've achieved, I'd imagine he'd have been wide-eyed and thinking, "Wow, that sounds pretty exciting." Yeah,
I think if I was to look back now, bearing in mind as I said, when I was 12, and my dad said, why do you do something that's achievable, And, when I think to myself, as I said, selected to play for England, which I mean, I can imagine he would have had a serious drink over that, my dad.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? And then, of course, years later, I was fortunate enough to fly a 747 into Barbados. Well, I could imagine what he would have been like at the airport, sitting down, waiting for this thing to land, So, as a 6-year-old, I don't think I could expect any more. I've done two of those incredible things, to to get. You know, I've got an England blazer in my cupboard there. You know, I've got a captain's uniform in my wardrobe there. You know, it's just the sort of thing that dreams are made of, and don't happen to everybody. And I'm just incredible. I mean, Roland told me the other day that he wanted to be a pilot when he was younger.
Yeah.
So Roland, I wanted to be one too, but I actually did it. You know, so
yeah, it was Roland Butcher that recommended I get you on this podcast because he was on it last year. A very good guest, Roland Butcher. If you're watching, Roland, hopefully you're well. Happy New Year to you. I mean, it must be, if you're looking back at your cricket life, there must be a part of you that thinks, oh, if only my back could have lasted another month, I could have had 1 or 2 test matches under my belt and at least have kind of finished cricket with a test match appearance because you were so close, weren't you?
Yeah. If I had, I mean, I think if I had to relive that period now, I'd have wrapped myself in cotton wool from the time that I was selected. You know, I would have done the minimum that I could have done to get me to the first test match, which was in Jamaica. That's what I would have done. I look back now and I think, well, why did you train as hard as you did? Why did you do all the road running? Why did you do all this? You know, but you were just trying to give yourself the best chance that you could have, you know, once you get there. You know, maybe I just overdid it. Maybe, you know, if I'd thought about it, I'd have just, I was just lying in the bath for 3 months or something. You know,
okay, I mean, but what you do is you, isn't it? And that when you were talking about reading the magazines and being obsessive about it, and giving everything, you obviously did that with your cricket as well. If you'd done it any differently, you wouldn't have been you, would you?
No, absolutely. And I do that now. I mean, I wrote this book. My missus will tell you, I wrote this book, and I every day I went after I just wrote it, corrected it. I mean, drives the poor woman crazy, you know. But that's me. You know, when I was playing cricket, I was obsessive the same way, and the reason was that I never wanted to. I didn't mind failure. I didn't mind failing. If that's what happened, you know. But what I would have hated to do was to go to the Caribbean and not be fit enough, or not, you know, not be able to do it to the maximum. You know, I just, and that was my whole career. You know, if I'm gonna write something, I write it, and I write it, and I write it, and I write it, and that's me. I don't know where that sort of obsessive behaviors come from, but that's just me.
Well, anybody that gets on your planes will be delighted to know that you obsessively see it through to landing safely at the other end.
Absolutely. I know. And it's the same thing. You know, I got simulators. We do simulators every 6 months. You know, we're going to sim. And 2 weeks before the simulator, you know, this place is just shut down. That's it. Done. You know, I'm just in them books because I ain't going to fail that for the lack of preparation. It ain't gonna happen. You know, I fail it because I've messed something up, but not because of lack of preparation. Yeah.
I'm going to take you back to some of the 20 questions, some of the more frivolous ones. I mentioned to you when I invited you on that some serious questions. We've done most of those, and some of the frivolous questions are left. If you could meet anybody, living or dead, who would you like to meet? It's that kind of dinner party question. Who would you like to have around for dinner?
Well, funny enough, right? Me and my missus was discussing this the other day because we were talking about the final supper. You remember the final supper with 12 of them sitting around, or 13 of them sitting around the table, and we were thinking, if you were the big man, who would you have around there as the final supper? And you know, I came up with you know, Mandela, Malcolm X, you know, William Wilberforce. I mean, I said that to her, and she said, well, who's that guy? You know, and I said, William Wilberforce, the guy, you know, that, you know, come, you know, try to get rid of slavery.
Yeah.
And you know, people, all people like that, yeah, Malcolm X, you know, Winston Churchill. You know, I've got a list as long as my arm. I reckon I could come up with 12 people that I would want around our table, you know.
We could have done the podcast just on that, Ricky, couldn't we, by the sounds of it?
Absolutely.
Next question. Who would play you in a movie about your life? They're going to make Balls to Fly. Who's going to play Ricky Ellcock?
Well, he's got to be a good-looking fellow, isn't he? I
Well,
mean,
obviously.
tall, handsome. I think I'm gonna go for Brad Pitt. You know, the guy is just.
What was
Did
the
who
last?
did Roland go for? Who did Roland go
Oh,
for?
I can't remember. Do you know what? I can't remember. I need to have a look back at his episode. I can't remember who he chose for that.
Yes, I know who he's gonna go for. I'll tell you that.
I can't remember what he asked for.
Yeah, it'd be like Idris Elba, or he might even go for himself, to tell the truth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you can do worse than Idris Elba. He's good on that.
Yeah,
Honestly, he's good on that hijack thing. What is the last time you can remember feeling really nervous? Are you a nervous kind of guy? Do you let things get to you, or do you just take things in your stride?
No, I'm not terribly nervous. The couple of times that I was nervous in my career, one was sitting the common entrance exam in Barbados when, you know, at 9 years old, you sit a common entrance in Barbados to get into one of the schools, you know, and the schools are sort of graded or marked that you get in that exam. And of course, your mum, your dad are forever saying, you know, you're going to pass. And if you don't pass, you know, this is what we're going to do to you, you know. And so that was fairly anxious time. I think on the morning of the 7th in St. Lucia, I had, because I just knew that it was going to be make or break, you know. I remember Boyce had said that in a article during that tour, he said, you know, I think this stuff is in Ricky's mind, you know. And I thought, nah, it can't be in my mind. But I was going to prove to myself it wasn't in my mind, you know. And I remember being incredibly anxious and nervous about that particular period. You know, there's been a couple of other times in my career, you know, waiting for your command flight to come out. You know, when you first selected as captain, waiting for that, you get butterflies and stuff like that. You know, so little odds and periods like in my life I've had sort of nerves, but I'm not generally a nervous person.
That day where you were told about your back and basically the writing was on the wall from there on, wasn't it, in terms of your cricket? That was kind of a pretty big sliding doors kind of moment, wasn't it? Because if they'd come in and said, I'll just take a couple of these tablets, you'll be fine, you're playing the test match next week, your life goes down the cricket route. Instead, your life goes off towards flying a plane. There's kind of two very different routes from that day, wasn't there?
Yeah. Well, life is a tree of branches, isn't it? But I mean, I tried everything. I don't know. When you read the book, you'll see that. I had a guy phone me in the hotel. Myself and Nasser Hussain were roommates in the Barbados leg of that tour. And I was lying in bed, and normally they block all phone calls from coming through to the hotel. And a guy phoned up and got through, you know, maybe because it was Barbados, obviously. And he said to me, I answered the phone. He said, Ricky, I'll tell you what, buy a can of WD-40, spray it on your back, and that'll get rid of the pain. And so I thought, put the phone down, you know, I thought, what a quack. And then I thought, suppose that works. You know what I mean? And I remember saying to Nas, guys said WD-40. I said, I'm not talking rubbish. You know what? And I got up, I walked down to the petrol station at the bottom of Rockley Hill, and I bought a can of WD-40, came back up and sprayed it on my back. You know what I mean? Of course, nothing happened. You know, just like I had acupuncture. I went for acupuncture. Yeah. I got in a van. I read a little thing in a paper in St. Lucia, I think it was, a little thing that said, you know, acupuncture cures everything. And I just thought, you know what? I'm doing that. You know, I got in a van and I went to some little back street place in St. Lucia. And this woman just stick some needles in my back. And I remember telling Nassau, somebody I told, and they told Mickey Stewart, man, he went absolutely ape shit. You know, you just say, Rick, come on, man. You can't be doing things like that in this day and age. You know, there's AIDS out there. You don't let people stick things in you. But I was desperate, clutching at straws, you know?
Yeah. Willing to try anything. I mean,
Yeah, willing to try anything.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is the Fonz, 1 is me. How cool are you?
The funds. Hey. I don't know. Where am I gonna be? Where do you think I'm gonna be? Give me a figure. She's saying 6.
6.
She's saying 6.
Well, and she's been nice to you, so we'll take it as a 4.
Very nice to me. She's very nice to me. When you get off the phone, she'll say 0.
Last question, Ricky, and it's been really good to speak to you today.
Yeah.
If I could give you a time machine, I've just delivered one just outside your window there. You can take it forwards in time, go and see what the future holds. You could take it back to any day in the past during your lifetime or before. Where would you like to take it to? What would you like to go and see?
Well, what would I like to go and see? I'd like to go and see. Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to wind the machine back until that period when I was selected for England, and from then onwards, be able to work out how I was going to play that first Test match. That machine, so that I could seek the path of least resistance up until that first Test match. That's what I would want to do. I would, that's what I think I would use the time machine to do.
And that's a good plan. We'll see how that goes. If I'd said, actually, we just got well, somebody actually just on the messages here has said thank you to Ricky for joining me today. Exactly, thank you to Ricky for joining me today. Been really good to talk to you, Ricky Ellcock. I can remember watching you play. I think it was Chris Broad said that you were the fastest bowler he faced on the county scene. So you were rapid at one stage, weren't you?
Yeah, I played. I gave Brody a spell in, I think it's 89, something like that. And every time he sees me, he still talks about it. Actually, it was fairly rapid. It was Gat said that. Gat said, "Look, we had 205 to win or something," and he said, "Look, it made no sense trying to stop runs. Just go for it, So and it was a fairly fiery spell at old Brody. He's never forgot it.
Well, I'll share the link to buy your book on all of the various socials. And if you are listening to this podcast later, just look in the text underneath. You'll be able to see how to buy the book. If you quote the code Badger Fly when you buy the book, you don't get it for £21. You get it to £15 because you've basically watched Ricky on the Cricket Badger podcast. Ricky Ellcock, thank you very much for joining me. Happy New Year to you. Hopefully you pass all of your little tests and things as you go through and you keep flying.
Thank you, James. I absolutely enjoyed this. It was a pleasure, and Happy New Year to you and all your family. As you say, remain as my friends always say to me, remain poor, peaceful, and polite.
Poor, yeah. I can certainly do the first one. I'm always poor. Anyway, thank you for watching out there, everybody. And Ricky's book is available, called Balls to Fly. And as I say, you can see the link on how to get it at the end of this. There it is. Look on the screen there. Balls to Fly.
On the screen. Balls to Fly.
Journey from the cricket pitch bowling rapid deliveries to flying rapid air flights across the Atlantic and becoming the first black captain on the Virgin Atlantic flights. Quite some tale, I would think, and good read there. Courtesy of Ricky. So thanks for joining me, Ricky. I will talk to you again soon,
James.
I hope. And out there, everybody, I will try and put up something at the end of this so we can finish this properly. Where's my outro screen gone? Okay. There it is.
Happy New Year to all the folks out there. Enjoy and good health.
Cheers, Ricky.
Bye-bye.